Alright, today we're going to take a look at one of the most popular watches of the last maybe 2 years or so in any price range. We're going to take a look at the Tissot PRX, particularly the 40mm and what people are dubbing the Tiffany blue version. Personally, I'm not a big fan of that name. I think it's overdone. And I think anything now that's baby blue or so gets called that, but in reality this is more of a seafoam green color. Now this watch has been reviewed a million times by a million different people, so we'll go through the specs quickly and then talk about what I like and what I don't like about it. So right off the bat, this is obviously the 40mm version, though it does wear a lot bigger because of these end links here. As you can see, these don't bend. So in reality, this is what you're going to be wearing on the wrist. That's quite big. That being said, I'll put it on the wrist at the end of this review, and you'll be able to see how on my small wrist I am able to wear this. And I do think that reports have been pretty exaggerated by people saying it's too big, but you could be the judge of that. Now this is also available in a 35mm version. As of now, we're in April of 2023. The 35mm only comes in quartz, though I do think that's changing. There are rumors that Tissot is releasing the Powermatic version in one of those, but as of now it has not been released. Now this does come in those two sizes with a variety of different colors. You get it in black and blue, and actually different shades of blue. And the Powermatic version, as of now, again this might change later, has a waffle dial, while this has more of a brushed, kind of almost like a linen kind of dial. They retail for the automatic movement for around $675, around there, and this quartz version for about $350, $375. Though because these have been so popular, the market is kind of flooded with them right now, so you can get them pre-owned for quite a bit less, excuse me. Now this is a pretty thin watch, though you can see there the thickness of this is going to come from the bezel and the case back. You do have a stamped crown. Now Tissot did release an aftermarket strap for these. Obviously you would put them right here. They do have the quick release, which is actually pretty appreciated. It's still pretty hard to get in there. My fingers might be a little bit too big, but it does make things a lot easier. That being said, I am not a fan of this strap. I think if you're buying this watch, you're buying it for the bracelet in large part. So I'll likely be selling this, but it's good to know. There are a few aftermarket options out there if you are interested. So what do I like about this watch, what I dislike? First, let's start with the positives. Everybody has said this, but I'll say it again. The bracelet is actually very, very comfortable. You can see the flexibility of it here. You do have this clasp, spring-loaded clasp with the Tissot signed on it. And really at this price range, I know everybody says it, but they're absolutely right. You are going to be hard-pressed to find something better at this price range. I do enjoy this color specifically, and Tissot has released so many of them. I would really commend them for all of the variety that they've been adding. I also think the price is quite good on this. We do see brands like Seiko kind of running away in the last few years with the pricing. But at this price range, I don't think it's too affordable, but at the same time, I think they could have charged more and gotten away with it. Besides that, it's pretty comfortable. It's a good design. It's good tech. Overall, it's a good watch. So now let's talk a little bit about the negatives of what I don't like about the watch. First of all, and I think this is purely subjective, I do think this design has kind of been beat to the ground by now. There are a million options for a three-handed integrated bracelet watch. I think everybody is really trying to capitalize on that kind of royal oak look. I do think it's a little bit bland, and I do think that Tissot might be the last big brand that kind of gets away with the big release like this. I have seen a couple of other micro brands releasing similar watches, and people jump all over them and criticize them for kind of, you know, just redoing what everybody's doing. I'm not a fan of that aspect, that this has been beat to the ground by now, but they get away with it. It's not necessarily a negative thing, but it's certainly not a positive thing. Another thing that I am not a fan of is, as we'll see right now, the lume on this is quite weak. Tissot does not have the brightest lume, and this certainly falls in line with that. Other than that, I do wish the 35mm did come with the Powermatic movement, and I think that's coming soon, but as of now, I suppose that is a criticism. The watch is moving on to more positive. The watch is super comfortable, and I think the sizing is good. If only they had gone kind of the Audemars Piguet route, the Royal Oak route of a 37mm. I think that would have been a good middle ground between 35 and 40. But with that being said, let's look at the size and compare it to others. I brought out some of these popular watches, and I think a lot of us know the size of them to compare, and here it is next to the Lunar Pilot. As you can see, if you consider the extra link that I mentioned, this might wear similar to the Bulova here. And that being said, this is a pretty big watch, so keep that in mind. Here it is next to one of the Swatch Speedmasters. So as you can tell, it's not that much bigger, it's not that much smaller. For me, one of the most important things is really how the dial looks on the wrist. And while the case and the extra link might be pretty big, the dial itself is what, in my opinion, makes a big difference. And I'll throw it on the wrist in a bit. But as you can see, it doesn't wear all that different from this Swatch, the Moon Swatch. And finally, here it is next to the Turtle. And similar to the Bulova, this is a big guy, the big watch, and it's certainly enormous compared to the PRX. So again, you will hear that criticism a lot of saying that the 40mm is simply too big. I don't think that's the case. I think it's really just people moving towards smaller watches at the moment. And personally, I think if you're going with this kind of bold design, you might as well go big. I think the 35mm was just too small. It is big. I think 37 would have been perfect, but I still went with this one. Now let's check out the lume, see how that looks compared to these, and then we'll check out how it looks on the wrist. Now, like usual, we are not in complete darkness. You know, my philosophy is that in complete darkness, everything looks bright. Here it is. You can see it, but it's very dim. And yeah, in case you cannot see it there, each indice is lumed. And that's a nice touch. I have seen this design kind of go the other route, but I do wish it would have been a little bit brighter. Here's next to the Omega Swatch. Now keep in mind, the Swatch is a $200 watch, so it is a little disappointing to see it really kind of tower over the Tissot in the lume section. Bulova is another brand that's kind of notorious for not having the great lume, and they certainly kind of line up together there. Neither one of these are great lumes. And of course, I gotta bring out the king of lume here, Seiko. Just really look how that one blows it out of the water. I know you might be thinking that because it's not completely dark, that might be affecting it. And it is, but compare it here to the Seiko. That doesn't seem to be an issue for it. So all in all, I do like this watch. It's extremely comfortable. I'll see how it does on the wrist, but I think the color alone is enough for me to keep it in my collection for quite a while. It's comfortable. Let's throw it on the wrist and see how that wears. So by now you have seen the footage of it outside. I think outside this dial absolutely rocks. It looks completely different than inside, and you really are able to see the texture on the dial, which to me is a huge selling point. Like I said earlier, it does wear a little bit big, but it's not unwearable. I have a very small wrist, excuse me. I have about a 6.5-inch wrist, so if I can wear it, I think most will be able to wear it. But again, there's a reason these are so popular. There's a reason why everybody loves them. And really, they are a great value. And if you can overlook how overdone this design is by now, I think you'll really be happy with this watch. We'll see how it sticks around in my collection.